From a secure location in southwest Scotland has emerged an artist known as John Morris. His aim is to leave you in awe, enthralled and entertained by his brand of artwork. Tonight we present to you the season finale of The Artist. When we last saw the artist, he was busy creating a beautiful mountain scene. Tonight we're going to present to you in its entirety the finale, how it ends up looking, and how the artist creates this beautiful piece of artwork and his most challenging project to date. The artist now comes in with, I believe it's a filbert brush and some Mars black. He then begins creating a half circle from one side of the land to the other. I can only assume that this is going to be a bridge. Once again, the artist has got his custom face paint on, but also very good looking hair. It's nice, shiny and glossy from all I can see. So the artist comes in, he creates one line that's longer nearer to him and one line that's shorter further away. This is to create the illusion of perspective and distance. If you painted along with us before, you'll know how key and how vital these techniques are to creating spot-on artwork. Using a small brush, he has plenty of control here. Smaller brushes are fantastic for control and getting into all the nooks and crannies. Bigger brushes are much better for obviously covering canvas quickly and for more the accomplished and comfortable artist. It takes a little bit of titanium white on that same filbert brush. Begins working a little bit of snow onto the path of the bridge. Notice the directions that the artist is working in. When the bridge is nearer to the left, the lines are coming down more to the left. When it's nearer the middle, the lines are coming more straight. And when the bridge is closer to the right side of the land, the artwork and the paint begins to roll to the right. He then picks up a liner brush, adds a little bit of water and goes into Mars black. He's doing this to create the illusion of almost like a bridge handle. Notice how he's creating the little sticks and little twigs and pieces of wood that are coming up, which people would use specifically in the olden days if it was an old rope bridge. Each line wants to be roughly the same size. The artist is doing the same technique on the other side of the bridge as well. As you can see, in between each line, he has another line. From this angle, we can see a little bit clearer. We don't call this the artist's most challenging work to date for nothing. The artist then comes in with a little bit of Mars black, small amount of titanium white, and a little bit of water, mixes them together, which creates almost like an olden day ink effect, meaning that the artist can easily connect these lines and these bits of wood up together. A wet paint always flows better than a dry paint. As always, if you're painting in acrylic, you're going to use water to wash and clean your brushes and to make the paint flow a little better. If you're using oil paint, you'll use oil thinner, turpentine or white spirit. The artist now continues to adding a little bit of detail on the underside of the bridge. From this angle we can see just how he's blending things in a little bit more. He cleans the brush up a little bit. He then picks up his fan brush. This is a micro fan brush, and he begins creating evergreen trees. Now, to do this, the technique is very simple. You create a small line and then build a tree in the shape of a cone. From this angle we can clearly see how the artist is doing this. You saw the small line, and then he just begins dabbing the paint on either side of the line. The technique for this is basically you want a bushy cone. If you have a bushy cone, you can't go wrong. Thinner at the top, wider at the bottom. And the artist works down now. He'll create several trees in this effect and using this technique. It's a great technique for creating a whole forest really quickly. Coming in with a little bit of black paint, he creates a much larger tree that's closer to him. He puts in the shadow effect underneath, as you can just about see there, and all he's doing is scrubbing it in. We'll get to that more later on. The artist is once again adding detail to the underside of the bridge. He's also adding it to the land to create those perfect angles. Remember we talked about last week on how to create that wonderful 3D effect? Straight land going across, and then the cliff face coming straight down. That's more or less what the artist is tidying up here. He's just adding a little bit of detail, a little bit of highlight where the moon will be hitting the rock face. We can already see here how 3D his painting looks. He cleans up the brushes, picks up a little filbert brush, a little bit of Mars Black, and begins putting in some shadow underneath the bridge. All he's doing here, as you can clearly see, is just scrubbing in a little bit of colour. Nothing too technical. The artist continues to develop his painting by adding shades and shape to those angles that we spoke about earlier on. This is to ensure that everything is absolutely spot on. As we said before, there is no substitute when it comes to the artist's eye for detail. Now coming in with a little bit of Mars Black and a small amount of water, the artist creates some straight lines, and I believe these are going to be lampposts. We're going to see these in a whole lot of detail as this painting continues to develop. But as we can see here, he's matching the size from one to the other, continuing to work on his perspective and his size proportions. Here we can see a little bit clearer, and the best way to describe how to paint a lamppost is for all you folks that like to have a wee drink of a weekend. Well, think about the shape of a lamppost and think about the shape of a wine bottle. Do you see the connection? Maybe there isn't actually that much of a difference. Maybe the folks who created lampposts are trying to tell us something. Anyway, back to the painting. So the artist is using Mars Black. As we've said before, he's laying here a base colour. A base colour is your foundation. Your foundation is everything else that the painting builds upon. It is absolutely vital to get your foundation spot on and as best as you can. Working towards the top of the painting again, the artist comes in with a Mars Black brush, and I believe there's a filbert brush. And all he's doing here is just creating more depth and detail onto the castle. This is where he puts the defining shapes onto his castle. As we can see here, he's extending some of the towers and beginning just to add a little bit more darkness into the castle. Touching up, believe it or not, the darkest areas are going to be where it's closest to the moon, because the moon is now silhouetting the colour of the castle. Coming back in towards the base of the castle, you can start to see now how the artist is developing things. Ooh, let's see where this development goes. We have a straight line across, but that wouldn't be another bridge, surely. It looks to be that he's putting in a small rectangle. Now I wonder what this could be. Well, we know what it is. What the artist is going to do here is lay the basis for something really special. We'll see what it is at the end of the show. He's doing this in Mars Black with a little bit of water once again, and all he's doing here is just putting in a small rectangle from one side of the land to the other. As we've said before, if you're using oil paint, you're going to want to thin your paint with, well, oil thinner, turpentine or white spirit, preferably all odourless. Or if you do use ones that have odour, please be sure to wear a mask. That's a little health warning from the artist and us. If you're using acrylic paint, which we much prefer here because it doesn't yellow, doesn't crack, doesn't fade, and doesn't give off any harmful emissions, you will mix your paint with water just to create that smoothness. So the artist has painted a rectangle from one side of the land to the other. He's then adding in some more detail into the rock face and the drop that we talked about at the beginning of the show. Bear in mind that this area of the painting would have minimal lighting, so it doesn't want to be too bright. We'll probably add into a few little highlights here. Okay, now the artist is going to show you how to place shadows underneath objects. The shadow wants to be the same size as the object that it is, well, obviously shadowing, but it is reflecting, that is omitting the shadow. And that's what the artist was showing you there with his fingers. All he's doing here is scrubbing in a little bit of black. Moving back up to the top of the painting, the artist used a little bit of Mars Black and a small round head brush, and he's putting that path back in that we saw him working last week. Notice how he's zigzagging. Obviously most paths would not be zigzagging, but this adds a little bit more of, I suppose, a fantasy effect, and it's good for proportions as well, and for perspective. With a little bit of phthalo blue and a little bit of titanium white, a small amount of black, the artist is putting on another layer of snow. As we've said before, the artist is composing these paintings as you see it evolve, so he doesn't have anything really to work with. For this painting he has a basic sketch, but there's no photographs or anything to tell him where everything needs to be. This is up to the artist's imagination, and what an imagination it is. So there are times that the artist may paint something in, and then may paint it out, and then may paint it back in again. You just never know what you're going to see. I believe we had a slight technical fault there, I do apologise. Okay, the artist is inviting us a little bit closer. Now he's showing us, in depth and up close, how to place snow into objects that have already been painted. Notice how he's going round. He's been very, very careful on how he paints. Just again with that side to side motion, that is really, really key when painting. As we've said many times before, the angles that you paint in is the way the paint is going to dry. So if you want snow that's going up and down, that's fine. But for most paintings, remember, the landscape tends to be side to side. While the paint's wet, the artist comes in with a little bit more titanium white and begins pulling from the base of the trees just out into that land where he's just been painting the snow. He does this while the paint is wet, so the paint can actually blend together quite nicely and it doesn't leave any patchy effects. Just gently blending side to side and working on towards the top. This is also showing you how you can develop paintings that you've already done. This is also showing you how you can build upon work that maybe has already been painted and you want to change it, but you don't feel you can. Well, here the artist has shown you, you absolutely can. Finishing up now with the snow on the left side of the canvas. The artist has laid in some beautiful effects. Again, we wanted to show you in its entirety, so as you could see the technique behind how the artist is creating this painting. The artist always remembers to paint around the side of the canvas. Some artists prefer to, some artists prefer not to. The artist prefers to paint around the sides of the canvas because it gives that beautiful 3D effect. The artist now comes back in with, I believe, a filbert brush, and he's now painting back in the beautiful little lamppost that you saw him paint earlier on. Now that the snow has been touched up, you can do these quite easily. If you want to skip ahead, please do feel free. If you want to see how he puts shadow underneath objects again from different angles, please continue watching. For the third time now, the artist is putting back in that path. Again, we do hope you enjoy these videos. Please do let us know in the... Zooming in a little closer, we can now see how the artist is putting some shadow underneath those distant trees. The same technique as we've seen before, a little bit of black paint on a round head brush or a filbert brush or even a liner brush works really well. And then he's just literally scrubbing in the shape just underneath the trees. I have to say the painting is completely transformed, obviously, from what we saw even a couple of minutes ago. The artist puts in a tree that's a little bit closer. We're now more than halfway towards the end of this painting. The artist is showing you here to remember when you're putting in the shadows, it's vital to remember the angle that you are placing your shadows in. So for example, if the moon is where it is obviously in the painting, the angles of the tree shadow is going to be more towards the left. If it was facing straight on, well, everything that the moonlight hits has shadow and it bounces off. I know that was a great explanation. The artist comes in with a little bit of a micro fan brush, a little bit of Mars Black, and a little bit of water. 3 littles. And once again, he's giving this big tree a bit of a friend, and he's just scrubbing in the shadow underneath the artwork and around the sides as well. He now comes in, let's see what he's going to do. Ooh, could it be? I believe it is. It is a waterfall. If you wondered what that rectangle was, well, yes, it's one of the artist's famous waterfalls. And all he's done here is to add some titanium white onto the brush, a small amount of water, and he's gently, very gently, just pulling over the top of the rectangle that you saw him paint earlier on. The artist comes in, reloads the brush each time, and works that same motion. Notice how he pulls slightly to the left and then pulls straight down. This is the technique and the key for creating really, really awesome, lifelike waterfalls. Well, he's got some titanium white on the brush. He adds in a little bit of mist and spray where the water's just going to be hitting really quickly and bouncing up. See what we mean about the artist's attention to detail. He comes in with a bit of a fan brush, no illusion this week. You can tell the artist is being serious, and begins putting in a few little water lines. Now these will not be there at the end of the painting. This was just to show you, and I suppose so the artist could find out for himself what worked and what didn't. Remember, we've seen the final picture. This water line will not be there at the end, but it's kind of a cool effect. If you're ever interested in creating water lines, I know there are some fantastic videos on youtube.com/John Morris Art from the Heart. I believe he's got a introduction to painting course that's up there that teaches you how to create those beautiful lines. Coming in now with a 1/4 inch brush, a little bit of titanium white, and a little bit of Mars Black. The artist is now going to begin creating the highlight onto the cliffs. Look how that just comes to life and just pops straight off the canvas. Good job, Mr. Artist. Remember, there'll be less light on the left side than there would be on the right side, because obviously, well, there's less light from the moon on the left side than there is on the right side. I'm doing well tonight, aren't I? Notice how the artist again is pulling down, straight down. I can't emphasize this enough, guys. When you're pulling straight down, it brings everything to life. Also, notice that there is a lack of detail that is on the left side and there's more detail on the right side because there is more light being emitted onto the canvas. But we're just getting ready to wrap up, and we do hope, of course, that you've enjoyed this series of The Artist. Please let us know in the comments section below or at youtube.com/John Morris Art from the Heart or johnmorrisartfromtheheart.com, and let's show you now the final painting. Well, there we go. It's what you've been waiting for. It's the most challenging one that the artist has taken on because of the size. Folks, keep in tune and keep in touch with us at youtube.com/John Morris Art from the Heart as we present to you the Artist Heart Series 4 coming in the new year, probably towards the end of January, and that's going to take place from Lake Garda, and that'll be right here on youtube.com. youtube.com/John Morris Art from Heart. Until then, have an awesome Christmas, take care, and God bless.